replacing Neil Peart. On paper, that sentence sounds almost impossible. Peart wasn't just a drummer. For decades, Rush fans considered him one of the greatest to ever sit behind a kit, and his playing wasn't something you learned, it was something you spent years trying to understand. So when Rush announced they were going back on tour without him, using a new drummer to perform his parts live, the reaction from the fanbase was exactly what you'd expect. Deep skepticism. Purists everywhere braced for disappointment. Then, Anika Nilles walked out at the Kia Forum in Los Angeles, sat down behind a custom drum kit, and by the end of the night, she had done something almost nobody thought possible. She'd won over the room. Not by copying Neil Peart, by understanding him. Today I'm breaking down exactly how she did it, straight from her own sit-down interview with music YouTuber Beato, and why the reaction from one of the most notoriously particular fan bases in rock has been overwhelmingly positive. Stick around, because the story of how she prepared for this tour is genuinely fascinating. Let's set the stakes here. Neil Peart wasn't a session drummer Rush could simply swap out. He was the band's primary lyricist for decades, and his drumming style, technically demanding, built on constantly shifting odd-meter time signatures, packed with intricate fills that somehow still served the song instead of showing off, became inseparable from what Rush even was as a band. For years after his death in 2020, Geddy Lee and Lifeson maintained that Rush, as they knew it, simply couldn't continue without him. That wasn't false modesty, it was the honest truth about how central his playing was to the band's identity. So bringing the music back live meant finding someone who could do more than hit the right notes at the right times. They needed a drummer capable of genuinely understanding Peart's musical language, his phrasing, his logic, the way he built a fill toward a payoff, well enough to perform it convincingly to an audience of people who had, in many cases, studied Peart's drumming for decades. That's the job Anika Nilles walked into. And going in, a lot of longtime fans assumed it simply couldn't be done well. Anika Nilles isn't a newcomer to serious musicianship. She comes out of a world of fusion and progressive drumming in Sarevor, the kind of technically demanding, genre-blending playing that requires serious command of odd time signatures and complex rhythmic ideas well before Rush ever entered the picture. That background matters enormously here, because Rush's catalog is famous for exactly that kind of complexity, constantly shifting meters, unconventional song structures, parts that would trip up a lot of accomplished drummers. In other words, this wasn't someone learning to handle odd time signatures for the first time because of this gig. It's someone whose entire musical foundation had already prepared her, in a sense, for exactly this kind of challenge. She just hadn't applied it to Rush's material yet. One of the most interesting details to come out of her interview with Beato was just how deliberately she prepared Raft, starting with her actual equipment. Nilles explained that for this tour, she made the decision to set aside her usual maple drum kit entirely. Instead, she ordered a brand new, custom-built kit made from Bubinga wood. That's not a small or casual decision for a touring drummer. Building a completely new kit around a different type of wood takes real planning and lead time. Why Bubinga specifically? Because of the tone. She wanted the low-end punch, the weight, the authority in the sound that Neil Peart's compositions are built around. Peart's drumming often carries real physical heft in the recordings, a low, powerful presence underneath everything else. Nilles recognized that replicating that feel wasn't just about hitting the same notes. It required an instrument capable of producing that same kind of sonic weight in the first place. That's the level of detail she brought to this. Before she'd even worked out a single fill, she'd already thought through what her equipment needed to sound like to do the songs justice. Nilles has talked about how differently she had to approach learning Rush's catalog compared to how she'd normally prepare material. By her own account, there were moments where she genuinely wasn't sure how she was going to learn a particular song, and yet, somehow, it kept working out as she dug in. Part of the challenge was practical. With only a handful of focus songs to prepare with the full band ahead of initial rehearsals, she had to build a deep, almost instinctive understanding of Peart's playing across the wider catalog on her own time, rather than simply drilling isolated parts in a rehearsal room. That meant going beyond memorizing patterns. Rush's material is loaded with odd meter shifts and structural left turns that don't behave the way most rock songs do. Beato, during their conversation, was visibly impressed by how smoothly she moved through that complexity, not just playing the notes correctly, but understanding why the songs were built the way they were, so the transitions actually felt musical instead of mechanical. If there's one moment that really summarizes why this worked, it's her handling of the drum break in Tom Sawyer, arguably the single most scrutinized moment in Rush's entire live catalog, and one of the most famous drum passages in rock history. Fans and Beato both singled this moment out. What stood out wasn't that she played it note perfect, though by all accounts the technical precision was there. What stood out was that she didn't play it like a copybot, mechanically recreating Peart's exact physical movements just to check a box. Instead, she played his iconic fills with real technical accuracy while still letting her own signature playing style come through. Her fluid wrist movement, her finger rebound technique, the small physical signatures that make her playing recognizably her own. That's a genuinely difficult balance to strike. Play it too differently, and die-hard fans feel like they're not really hearing Rush. Play it too rigidly, note for note, and it can come across as hollow imitation, technically accurate but missing the life that made the original special in the first place. Nilles found the middle ground, respecting the structure and intent of what Peart wrote, while still playing it like a musician, not a tribute act going through the motions. Here's the part that matters most, honestly, because Rush fans are famously not an easy crowd to win over on something like this. Across Reddit threads, Facebook groups, and other fan communities, the consensus that's emerged has been overwhelmingly positive, and a big part of that comes down to two things fans keep repeating. First, the blessing from Peart's own family. Knowing that Geddy Lee and Lifeson brought Nilles in with the full support of Neil Peart's family gave a lot of longtime fans peace of mind going in. This wasn't being done behind anyone's back or against the spirit of what Peart would have wanted. Second, and maybe more important, is exactly the balance we just talked about. Musicians and fans alike have specifically praised her for learning the emotional and structural framework of these songs, rather than delivering a stiff, note-for-note copy. She's respecting the integrity of what Peart built, while letting her own world-class background in fusion and technical drumming bring something alive to the material, rather than just replicate it. For a fan base that spent years insisting nobody could really do this, that's about as strong an endorsement as you're going to get. Replacing an icon is never really about replacement at all. It's about whether someone can honor what came before while still bringing something real of their own into the room. Based on the reaction out of the Kia forum, and based on how deliberately Anika Nilles prepared for every part of this smidge, from the wood in her drum shells to the way she studied Tom Sawyer itself, she seems to have found exactly that balance. If you want to go deeper on this historic tour, let me know in the comments that I can break down the full opening night setlist, dig into her approach on tracks like 2112 or YYZ, or point you toward Rick Beato's full backstage interview. Hit subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind rock's biggest moments. See you in the next one.